Hi, folks. I think it goes without saying that parents are the people closest to us, and we should all be grateful to them, at the very least, for giving us life. But unfortunately, children of all ages sometimes forget about it. They often get annoyed with their moms and dads. They complain about the lack of brand new gadgets and stylish clothes. Sometimes, ungrateful children even reproach their parents for not being rich, without appreciating what they have. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that recently spread around the world. It's about a young man who can serve as a role model for each of us. Habil is an ordinary 26-year-old man living in Malaysia. He was a smart boy since childhood, but he grew up in a very poor family and often lacked the money to even buy a loaf of bread. While others in his place would complain about their poverty, this young man decided to act. While still a kid, he set a goal for himself: to spare no effort and to climb out of poverty. That is why Habil studied hard at school, and while his peers were kicking around a ball in the yard, the young man was learning science. As you might expect, his efforts and work paid off. After finishing school, he got a scholarship at a prestigious university and then graduated from it with honors. At that point, all doors were open to him. Habil applied for a job at a progressive Malaysian company that was managed by a famous entrepreneur, Azri Walter. Despite his young age, he proved to be an efficient worker from day one. It's no wonder that 6 months later, he was offered a better position with a monthly salary that was as high as 5,000 Malaysian ringgits, about $1,300. His dream seemed to be within reach because this salary was more than enough to live on. In fact, he could afford almost anything he wanted, but the young man's behavior puzzled his colleagues. While all the other office workers went out for lunch every day and often gathered in the nearby bar to relax after work, Habil brought lunch from home. In fact, the young man spent hardly anything on himself. He was trying to cut costs at every turn, on food, entertainment, clothes, and so on. He had only a few articles of clothing. From the outside, it seemed like the young man simply couldn't afford much. It got to the point that people started to consider him a misfit and called him a cheapskate. Of course, these rumors reached the CEO. Even though Azri believed that everyone had the right to spend their money as they saw fit, he did not understand it either. Why would a highly paid manager behave this way? Friends, everyone would have continued to consider Habil super stingy if it wasn't for something that happened later. Once long after work hours, Azri Walter returned to the office to grab some papers. His office was on another floor, but on his way back, he noticed that the lights were still on in one of the rooms. It was a little strange because normally there wouldn't be anyone in the office on a Friday night. Azri decided to check who that hard worker was and why he or she was staying there so late. When the boss approached the office, he heard some strange sounds coming from inside, and when he opened the door, he saw something surprising, or even shocking. I went straight to the room and opened the door. To my surprise, there was no one to be seen. I looked closer and saw a shadow under the desk. I couldn't understand what was going on. And can you imagine? I even got goosebumps, Azri wrote later. When the boss peeped under the table, he was taken aback. I'm sure you're wondering why. It was because he saw Habil on the floor with a rice cooker next to him. Habil, what are you doing here? What are you cooking on the floor? The boss asked his employee. From the look in his eyes, you could clearly see that the young man was very frightened. He did not expect to be noticed, and he answered in a trembling voice, I'm sorry for cooking rice in the office. I didn't get a chance to eat anything today. I will quickly clean everything up right now. Just don't fire me, I beg you. To say that the boss was surprised would be an understatement. He knew for sure that his employees got paid the day before, and Habil's salary allowed him not only to buy food, but even to have a meal at an expensive restaurant. That's why the boss decided to find out what's happening in Habil's life that made him cook rice on the office floor when he was earning decent money. The head of the company later wrote on his social media page, we should take time to really get to know our employees. Some of them are worthy of our highest respect. As it turned out, Habil was not at all stingy or a cheapskate, but on the contrary, he is a person who should be a role model to many. Habil told Azri his story, which made everything clear. My father died when I was 19. Before that, we weren't rich, but there was always enough food. Love and understanding reigned in our home, and we were brought up to be content with what we have. But after Dad died, we began to starve because he was the only breadwinner in the family. I tried to help my mother in every possible way, even in my student years. I had a part-time job, which brought a little money home. Since then, I've been providing not only for myself, but also for my mother and 3 younger brothers. They still go to school and they need new clothes. And in general, I don't want them to be lacking in things. They are still kids, and I am like a father to them. And although my mother doesn't really want to accept this help from me, I can see that she is having a hard time coping on her own. This is how Habil began his story. It turned out that the young man had been sending his mother more than half of his monthly salary for a few years already. He used the rest of his money to pay for food and a small room he rented. His mother and brothers lived in another town. I am grateful to her for giving me life and a happy childhood. I am grateful to her for her love and care, for always believing in me and supporting me. As long as I have arms and legs, I will not allow my family to want for anything. I wish you'd see my younger brothers. Each of them has his own personality. Although they are not making money yet, they try to help out our mother with housework. I want to be a real role model for them, Habil continued. Despite this man's young age, he was reasoning the way a mature man should. Right there, standing in the small office room, I could hardly hold back tears. I was so proud of him, Azri later wrote. Habil added that most people think that parents should help their children, which is true. But we also need to understand that there comes a time when things become the other way around, and it's the children's turn to help. Habil's words touched Azri very much, and he was incredibly moved by the young man's life story. I told Habil that everything would be okay and invited him for a delicious dinner. Habil initially refused, but his boss managed to convince him. They went to a cafe near the city center, and when the young man picked up the menu, he looked at the prices and hesitated to order. Of course, I noticed his embarrassment, and so I told him not to worry about the price because I would pay for everything. But Habil still chose the less expensive food. That Friday night, the CEO and the ordinary manager talked about a lot of things for a long time. No matter how strange it may sound, the boss will remember this conversation for a long time. Habil's story made him re-examine his values. Many of us have no idea what love and care is. This young man has made his way in life, but instead of wasting all his money on expensive things and brand new phones, he eats rice and sends all his money to his mom and brothers. Isn't that worthy of respect? Azri wrote. Every employer needs such employees because they will never let you down and will always be grateful to you. That is why I decided to help him. And now, I'm thinking of promoting him. In fact, parents give us a lot, but unfortunately, this understanding comes only over the years, and not to everyone. Today we consider ourselves smart and independent, but we were once helpless babies. Be sure to thank your mother from time to time for her hard-working hands, sincere conversations, and the ability to forgive. Say thank you to your dad for his wisdom, guidance, and admonitions. Looking at this young man, I realized that I had completely forgotten about my parents, whom I rarely visit. This weekend, I am definitely going home, the CEO added. We don't know how this story developed further, but one thing is certain. We often judge a book by its cover, thinking bad of people only because they look like misfits. The truth is that we all often forget that we all have unique stories. Friends, what do you think about this employee's story and his boss's reaction? Leave your comments and like the video if it impressed you. See you soon.